Hi friends, it's Sarah from Ruffles and Rain Boots, and today I am sharing one of my favorites, the Scarecrow Icelandic Lovey gnome. You can sew, you can glue, but if you would like to make him with me, just boop, stick around. As always, please like this video so I know you're here crafting with me. Now, we are making this guy today. He is so much fun. I'm going to be sharing a few new details for this tiered tray size gnome. This is the Icelandic Lovey pattern. There are 7 hats, feet, arms, reversible hats even, so it's a really stocked full pattern. Okay, so I'm going to be using a little bit of felt, a little bit of cotton fabric, and burlap. I'm also going to be using regular gnome making supplies, a sewing machine or hot glue gun. We're going to be using poly beads to fill and poly fill to stuff. So as I mentioned, this is is both a sewing or a no sewn pattern. I've shared this in the 4th of July Icelandic Lovey gnome already. Okay, so for the hat, I'm going to use burlap because the body actually makes the structure. So I'm going to hot glue hem this. You can sew burlap, but I'm going to show you a little bit later why you shouldn't, or at least you should do some things before you sew it up. So speaking of sewing, I'm just going to take this and follow the pattern for the seam allowance and for the structure of the body. Once I have the body, I'm going to attach the base. Very simple. If you're new to sewing, just don't use white thread. I'm only using white so you can see what I'm doing. You're going to use a coordinating thread. So if you are sewing, this dart system is super easy to make. We're going to go from where the pattern indicates all the way out to the hemline. If you are if you are hot gluing, I have shared in detail how to make this seam with hot glue. It is in the 4th of July Icelandic Gnome Lovey pattern. Whew, that's a lot of words. All right, so we're going to set that aside and move on to the booties. These are specific to this pattern. You won't see these anywhere else. And the reason is you can use them as legs if you extend this leg part here, or you can use them as just booties and put them directly up against the body. So you'll see here, this piece is a little bigger than it needs to be, and that's just to make it easier to sew. We'll be trimming that off. Do pay attention to the pattern on how high to stitch up, because if you stitch too high, you won't be able to turn your little booties outside right. Ask me how I know. Okay, so you're just gonna do the other booty, and then if you want to make arms, also do that. Again, I'm not going to sew this because I want to show you some really cute things to do. All right, so before we flip everything outside right, we're gonna go ahead and trim up our booty. So yes, we're going to trim off the threads, but we're also going to trim all that bit on the outside bottom and the front of the shoe so that when we turn it outside right, it sits nice and flat. Be sure to roll those seams in between your fingers to make them sit better. You see how cute it is? It's super cute, but don't use white thread because it will show. If you do only have white thread, go ahead and take a color fast marker to your thread only, and it'll hide it just perfectly. All right, so I wanted to show you there, it's not all the way sewn up, and that's okay. So go ahead and redo the other booty, and go ahead and do the same thing, flip everything out, and be sure to poke out the tippy top of your body. As you can imagine, if you're not new here, we're going to fill it up. So I'm using poly beads, which do not absorb odor, moisture, attract rodents or anything, and then I'm going to stuff the rest of the body quite full with poly fill. You can use Dollar Tree pillows, you can use low-cost pillows from big box stores, whatever you can find. But it's cute, right? I'm just showing you the bottom there. Okay, so this part is optional as well, but I really think it always adds something, you know, little special. If you'd like to use a wire, you're going to be putting the wire inside the body for this one. It's built all in one. Be sure to turn down or loop over the top and bottom of that wire so it doesn't poke through as you've moved it around. And the last part for this little body piece here is just to sew it up, close it with hot glue. So one thing here, again, you do not have to make this pretty, but you absolutely can. You can make a ladder stitch, or what I prefer, you know, the Frankenstein stitch, because I don't do well with sewing. And to hide it, I'm just going to poke the needle through the body, pull it taut, and then cut it off, hides it. And you have a nice little posable body. These are not load-bearing shoes. They can be, but I just think one day they'll fail unless you put some really heavy stock into that ankle. But I'm using them as just fluff, so I fill them full of polyfill, and then I'm going to sew up a little bit of this thing. I'm going to use the shaft as just booties, but if you want to use them as legs, you're going to sew it up without tucking anything under, okay? So I'm going to not only tuck it here, but I'll tuck it a little bit later. So here we go. I'm just tucking up that top edge, or tucking down that top edge, and then I'm going to glue it. And again, if you want longer legs instead of just the booties, you can skip this part and just sew it all the way up, or glue it all the way up on the shaft. All right, so just tie that off, and then we're going to repeat that for the second booty, which I won't bore you with, but you see how there's a little bit of leg there? All right, I'm not going to show you this. Let me fast forward through this. Hold on. Okay, so now you can see we've done both of them here. All right, and for the beard, I'm using a very rough and rugged brown fur. It's a couple of different colors. It's got some random piece hanging off right there. All right, so I just pull it out, making sure there's no fluff, and then I'm going to cut it just a little bit into sort of a triangle shape, more of like a rounded off V, and then make sure, don't get any fluff anywhere. All right, so now that we have all of our pieces, we're going to be folding over the burlap hem that we did. Now, burlap is porous, quite in fact, because there's holes all in it. So because we hemmed it, it's actually A, not going to run, and B, going to take the glue pretty well for the actual back seam. Just make sure that your glue is not going through the hat and you're not gluing the back of the hat to the front of the hat. Yeah, I've done that. Okay. Is super cute. Okay, so to make this look a little more rustic without our hat unraveling, I'm going to cut off pieces of burlap after I've glued them to the hat. So you can see here that long edge. To get that long edge, if you're new to working with burlap, you just yank one of the horizontal pieces. It's like a little string, just yank that and it'll give you that nice little fringe. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna glue this down, make sure it doesn't go anywhere, and then I'm gonna cut it off. It's super easy. But I like this because I've had to answer a lot of questions where people either bought someone's gnomes that had burlap and started to unravel, or makers saying, uh-oh, I have this problem, what do I do? This is how you solve that. And you can make as much fringe as you want by pulling off those horizontal pieces, and without unraveling your hat. Okay, so I'm just gonna do that here on the top front of the hat all the way down that edge. And it looks really cute, by the way, if you don't make it all even, just FYI. So here I'm gonna just do the front. I would get your hot glue finger guards if you like fingerprints, because I did burn myself here. Shocker. I know. But you can see I'm just pulling off horizontal pieces to give it a little more fringe. Now I'm going to test fit the hat. And so I'm going to do this. This is 1000% optional, but a little cut and a little window I think is going to be adorable for a patch. You can always put patches on the top of the fabric, but I think with burlap, because you can make it all kind of rough looking, it's always cuter to put it on the bottom side. So what we're gonna do is just cut a hole in the burlap, kind of fray it just a smidge, and then we're going to glue down a larger piece than we need. And the reason we're gonna do that is because it's gonna give our burlap the ability not to fray beyond that glue point, right? So if you don't like the amount of fray, you can go and get the little cast off pieces and glue those right on the inside, and it looks like it's, you know, kind of rough and frayed, which is a whole lot better than it actually fraying, right? We don't want it to come undone. Okay, so I'm going to put it back on the gnome. I'm just using a little bit of hot glue for that one. I'm gonna put it back on the gnome, and then I'm gonna cut a couple more of these little windows because I fell in love with the first one, if I'm being honest. So I draw all of my gnomes. Some of you know that. So I always like to do things that may be a little harder to do in crafting than they are in theory. And this is always one of my things, is I always like the rough look without actually unraveling anything. And so I needed to use it as much as I possibly could on this little guy, because it's perfect for it. And so I'm just gonna cut off any of the excess there. And I think the one at the top is probably my favorite. I don't know why, but I'm gonna cut another one here. I'm just gonna speed this part up so you don't have to, but I fell in love with this. I thought it was just the most fun thing ever. That one's my favorite. All right, so once you have that all done, make sure you're not gluing anything to each other. We're going to slip on the hat and then figure out where all of our pieces go. So here we are. We're going to put on our rather robust beard. You don't have to cut a huge beard. It does save on cost if you make a smaller beard. And then if you're using legs, it also will be nice to see those. I'm just using booties, which is why I'm using a very robust beard. All right, so I'm going to move those out of the way and make sure I understand where my nose needs to be. So go ahead and split the fabric or the fur to the fabric backing, add a generous portion of hot glue and glue on your nose, which can be a clay round, a wood bead, a wood half round, pom-pom, pantyhose stuffed with fluff, anything you would like for a nose. This one is clay. It's about 1 inch round. So I slipped the hat on, and I'm going to be sure to glue down my hat right to the tip of my nose because that's just sort of the scrunch that I like. And I'm just going to position the hat. You can glue down the back of the hat as well once you have everything where you'd like it. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be even further tucking in these little shoe booty things so that I can have just short legs. Add a generous portion of hot glue all up in there and then squish it into the body. And then squish it over there too. And guess what? You're all done. I love him. What do you think of him? Let me know in the comments below. Boop. And what's going to be really fun is, hey, why don't you guys name him? So I get asked all the time whether I name my gnomes. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. You let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe for more crafty fun.